Throughout the 90s and early into the 21st century, the tennis world was all about two of the most celebrated superstars in the history of the sport, Andre Agassi and Pete Sampras. Their rivalry was as exciting as tennis could possibly get. These guys captivated audiences for over a decade, and for very good reason. Looking back on one of the greatest tennis eras fans have ever known, here is what we remember. 2 decades after, Pete Sampras hung up his racket, followed by Agassi 4 years later. If anything could make a rivalry even more thrilling, it's when the two athletes are polar opposites in almost every way. The cold, laid-back demeanour of Bjorn Borg against the intensity and quick temper of John McEnroe. The elegance and artistry of Roger Federer against the fierce and fiery nature of Rafael Nadal. It was a song of ice and fire. In a similar fashion, Sampras and Agassi had contrasting characters and represented two different facets of the game. Sampras played a rather classic attacking game with a very focused, calculated and efficient approach. He was possibly the most proficient serve and volleyer of all time. On top of his phenomenal first serve, Sampras arguably had the most phenomenal second serve in tennis history, casually hitting 120 miles per hour second serves. This played a major role in his dominance and his outstanding success throughout his career. With tennis courts at the time being significantly faster than they are today, very few could match Pete's powerful, fast-paced game. Still, there was much more to Pete Sampras than his serve. Combined with incredible athleticism and coordination abilities, Sampras had absolutely everything a tennis player could ever desire. When it comes to the net, Sampras seemed to always pick the perfect timing to go forward. And when he did, his reflexes, leg movement and volley technique were flawless. In addition, he was never afraid to close in on the net, in large part due to his amazing ability to step back very quickly and hit back with an awesome overhead smash, one of his signature shots. That made a passing shot winner against Sampras one of the hardest tennis shots to come by. And then there is Andre Agassi. If there ever was one guy who could match up to Sampras' seemingly unbreakable game, there's your guy. Agassi's playing style was more unorthodox, bold and unpredictable. He was a great defending player and one of the best serve returners in history, along with the likes of Novak Djokovic and Jimmy Connors. Despite his huge defensive abilities, Agassi liked to take risks and go on the offensive. He was a hard hitter, pulling off blistering ground strokes both off his forehand and two-handed backhand. He was more than comfortable moving forward with his body and hitting the ball early, a famous trait of Roger Federer's game, for example. Early in his career, he usually attempted to strike first and end rallies as fast as possible. Over time, he learned to play more conservatively and got incredibly good at dictating the game from baseline, hitting hard with excellent depth and accuracy. On top of all that, there's something about Agassi and Sampras' rivalry that makes it all the more special. These two players contrasted with one another in every way and had very different personalities. Sampras was the archetypal athlete, focused, composed, disciplined, and mentally tough. He'd always let tennis do the talk. He smashed no rackets in his professional career and had very few tantrums. In a Sampras match, you know you're in for a good, clinical tennis and not much else. Still, he was one of the most admired athletes, inspiring countless tennis fans to pick up the racket. Agassi, on the other hand, was a wild, flamboyant character. He wore his heart on his sleeves and brought so much flash and flair to the game. As such, he was as great an entertainer as he was a competitor, hitting every shot as though his life depended on it and never failing to bring the crowd to their feet. However, that doesn't speak of the drastic transformations he underwent throughout his career in appearance, conduct, and crowd perception, which reflected in his career full of ups and downs. His dreamlike journey from a confused, clueless prodigy to a graceful and purposeful champion is one of tennis's most inspiring sagas. To put against each other two players who were nothing alike except for their immense talent and strife for greatness, made up a rivalry destined to echo through the ages. Agassi and Sampras gave each other a hard time on the tennis court, something neither of them could dare deny. Ever since Agassi and Sampras established themselves as two of the best players of their generation, things hadn't been easy for either. Despite a few tense feelings here and there, both spoke highly of each other's talent on many occasions. They acknowledged how much their rivalry meant to them. Here is what Sampras thought of playing Andre Agassi. It's a contrast, and it has the ingredients of a rivalry. It's different when I play him. There is a lot of respect for each other. We've competed since we were 8 years old, playing junior tennis. I need to step up whenever I play him. It was his return, his passing shots. He competed well, moved well, did everything that I didn't like to see. And if I was on my game, if I wasn't serving well, I thought it was going to be a love game for me. It was a tough matchup. He hit the ball well and early, so it was tough to control the court. I was doing a lot of running. If I didn't play well, it was going to be a long day. But being on the other side of the matchup was perhaps even more difficult. This is how Agassi perceived his arch rival. I think we're kind of opposite players, which meant the matchup lent for an all-court kind of tennis, and one of us was trying to impose his game on the other most of the time. I feel kind of different from Pete though. When I went on the court, not only did I have to play well, but it still meant even if I did, I had no say how the match would go. I could get my wins here or there, but he was the only guy I felt if I played my best tennis, I actually still could lose. Clearly, it was never a comfortable rivalry for either of them. For tennis fans, however, it was a real treat, keeping everyone on the edge of their seats in eagerness and anticipation. From 1989 to 2002, Agassi and Sampras played each other a total of 34 matches. Sampras came out on top in 20 meetings. He holds a 6-3 head-to-head advantage in Grand Slams, 4-2 in the Tour Finals, and 5-4 in world and international tournaments. The two contested 10 Masters matches and won 5 each. While Sampras held better records, it was mostly very close between the two. Their first match took place in the Italian Open in 1989, where Agassi comfortably and unsurprisingly defeated Sampras, who had just turned pro a year before. But that was the last time Agassi ever had it easy. Sampras' rise to the top was unbelievably quick, winning the 1990 US Open. He got to be the first of the two to win a major after an impressive straight-set final victory against none other than Agassi. Soon enough, Agassi-Sampras easily became the most anticipated tennis event. Between their first meeting and right before the 1995 US Open final, it was as close a contest as it gets. They won 8 games each. Among these were 2 of their best matches ever. 1993 Wimbledon quarterfinals, an epic 5-setter won by Sampras, who went on and took home his second Grand Slam title. 1995 Australian Open final, the two rivals' second Grand Slam final, except this time Agassi prevailed in 4 sets. Now, the 1995 US Open marked a huge turning point in their rivalry. By then, both had enjoyed moments of glory and were by far the biggest acts in tennis. That year, Agassi won the Australian Open and Sampras won Wimbledon. They were in top form prior to the final Grand Slam of the year. While Sampras ended the 2 previous years as world number 1, things were looking particularly good for Agassi. He knocked the North American summer season right out of the park, winning Washington DC, Montreal and Cincinnati, beating Edberg, Sampras and Chang in the finals. As a result, he finally dethroned Sampras and entered the US Open as the first seed. However, much was at stake as defending champion. Agassi wanted to tighten his grip on the top spot he worked so hard to take away from his rival. Both had incredible runs in the US Open. In the semis, they had to show their best tennis to go past tennis legends Jim Courier and Boris Becker, respectively. Sampras and Agassi prevailed in 2 epic 4-setters, and at last, the two celebrated American champions were ready to meet in a Grand Slam final right on American soil. A seemingly unbeatable Agassi, who aimed for a 27th consecutive win, did play great tennis, but was met by a relentless Sampras, who did everything right and left nothing to chance. In 4 incredible and tightly contested sets, Sampras won his 7th Grand Slam. Despite a very successful season and a Grand Slam title, which is more than most players can hope for, Agassi was utterly wrecked by this particular defeat, and nobody could express this quite as plainly as he did many years later in his autobiography. "I'm 26-1, and I'd give up all those wins for this one. All that work and anger and winning and training and hoping and sweating, and it leads to the same empty, disappointed feeling. No matter how much you win, if you're not the last one to win, you're a loser. And in the end, I always lose, because there is always Pete. As always, Pete." And so began the darkest age of Agassi's career, while Sampras continued to dominate tennis in the following years. His will gone and spirit broken, it was all downhill for Agassi, who missed the rest of 1995 and lost the number 1 ranking. Between 1996 and 1998, Sampras won 4 Grand Slams. On the other hand, Agassi was not the same anymore, and the world saw a promising career slowly fade away. Agassi even told his trainer, after a devastating 3rd-round loss in 1996 Monte Carlo, "Since losing to Pete at the US Open, I've lost the will." In the following year, he dropped as low as 141 in the ATP rankings and was completely out of the picture. For good. Or so it seemed. A tennis career full of potential and a great rivalry were on the verge of ending, and that would have been a real tragedy had Agassi not come back from the dead and written a new chapter in the tennis history books. In 1999, Agassi brought his transformed self under the spotlight again. He managed to win Roland Garros to complete a historic career Grand Slam, a feat previously achieved only by Rod Laver in the Open era and later by Federer, Nadal and Djokovic, but never by Sampras, who failed to go past the French Open semis. Sampras, however, never had the intention of making it easy on Agassi and defeated him in straight sets at Wimbledon to win a third consecutive grass major. But there was no breaking Agassi's will this time, as he went on and won the US Open. Despite another final loss against Sampras in the ATP Tour Finals, Agassi finally ended Sampras' record streak of 6 years at #1 ranking. From 2000 onward, the rivalry never ceased to amaze tennis fans all over the planet. Now, despite the emergence of a new generation of rising stars such as Lleyton Hewitt, Marat Safin, and Roger Federer, Sampras and Agassi stayed in the picture and were still the most popular players in the early 2000s. They treated the world with 3 iconic tennis matches that will be remembered for a long time to come. 2000 Australian Open semi-finals. Continuing his miraculous comeback, Agassi defeated Sampras in 5 sets and went on to win the trophy. He later won another 2 Australian Open titles and ended his career with an impressive total of 8 Grand Slams. 2001 US Open quarterfinals. In an iconic match regarded as one of the greatest tennis matches of all time, Sampras defeated Agassi in exhilarating 4 tiebreak sets. 2002 US Open Final. The swan song of a legendary rivalry and another match for the history books saw Sampras win his then record 14th Grand Slam, edging Agassi in 4 incredible sets of tennis. Even though the terrible US Open losses to Sampras continued, it didn't matter that much anymore for Agassi, who, at this point, had risen up wondrously and accomplished a feat that will long be remembered. His astonishing revival is truly an inspiration for all. As for Sampras, his phenomenal talent and unwavering focus made him the best and most successful tennis player of his generation. He was an exemplary athlete and a role model for all those aspiring to greatness. When 2 exceptional players compete for the same titles every year, they can't help but aspire to be the best. In the case of Agassi and Sampras, one clearly enjoyed the greater share of glory. The other struggled immensely to keep up and was so close to giving it all away, but came back and revived an astounding rivalry from the brink of death. In the end, he wasn't so far behind. By the end of Agassi and Sampras' careers, here is what their legacy looked like, in numbers. Sampras won 14 Grand Slams. Up until Federer, Nadal and Djokovic exceeded that by quite some margin, Sampras held the most Grand Slam titles in men's tennis. With 7 titles at Wimbledon alone, no player has won a single Grand Slam as many times. Agassi won 8 Grand Slams and is tied with legends Ivan Lendl and Jimmy Connors in 3rd place behind Bjorn Borg with 11 titles and Pete Sampras with 14. With 17 titles, Agassi ended his career holding the record for most ATP Tour titles. Today known as ATP Masters 1000, a record again broken by the next generation's Big 3. Sampras won 11 Masters and is in 6th place behind Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, Agassi and Murray. Sampras won 5 year-end championships, tied in 1st place with Ivan Lendl before Federer and more recently Djokovic won 6 titles each. Often unlucky with season ends, Agassi won a single ATP Tour Championships title. Agassi won the Olympic gold in 1996. Sampras only disputed the 1992 Summer Olympics and lost in the 3rd round. Agassi managed to win all 4 Grand Slams at least once. He completed the career Grand Slam following his legendary comeback in 1999 and is only the 2nd player to achieve this in the Open era after Rod Laver, later followed by Federer, Nadal and Djokovic. Thanks to his Olympic gold, he was the first man to complete the career Golden Slam. Today, only he and Nadal hold this accomplishment. Sampras won 64 while Agassi won 60 career titles in total. Between Grand Slams, Masters, Tour Finals and the Olympics, the 4 most prestigious tennis events, Sampras has a slight edge with 32 to 27 titles. Sampras spent a total of 286 weeks at the top of men's tennis. Sampras held the all-time record until it was broken by Federer and Djokovic. He also held the ATP record of 6 year-end #1 rankings, exceeded only by Djokovic in 2021. One of Agassi's biggest struggles was holding on to the #1 ranking, but he managed to stay at the top for 101 weeks. Although he had a shorter tennis career, Sampras won more majors and was much more consistent than his rival for a longer period of time. On top of leading their head-to-head, most would agree that Sampras got the better part of their rivalry. But how better was he as an actual player? Well, that's a tough call. After all, their playing styles are so drastically different that you can make a case for each player. Sampras mastered the serve and volley more than anyone but he was a complete player, more so than many people remember. Despite his conventional attacking game, he was the better athlete, displaying incredible movement and perfect shot motions. Agassi could be seen as the better all-court player, mainly because he won major titles on all surfaces, as opposed to Sampras, who never adapted his style enough to win the French Open. Agassi was the better baseline player thanks to his amazing returns and staggering ground strokes. Still, as far as the major titles and records go, you could see how Sampras was the more prolific and better player overall. Though not by a very large margin. Perhaps that could have been a different story if they played on the modern, slower surfaces, or had Agassi won the 1995 US Open final and never had his massive decline in the following years. But in the end, Sampras prevailed more often than not throughout his career and is seen by many as the greatest tennis player ever, up to his generation. Agassi too is considered among the greats and certainly made the rivalry much more thrilling, for his incredible fighting spirit and miraculous comeback was the stuff of legend. The two American legends brought out the best in each other. No matter how tense their rivalry often was, what truly matters is the lasting impact they had on the sport and the enduring respect and admiration they earned.